Last spring, protests erupted in the U.S. over pandemic safety measures. At rallies on the Michigan State House lawn in April and May, some protesters expressed desperation over loss of income, while others were incensed by what they considered to be an abuse of power by Governor Gretchen Whitmer, a Democrat. Some protesters even brought guns into the State House.
If we didn't bring a firearm, these people wouldn't be protected. The government can do as much overreach as they want.
Last night, the FBI and Michigan State Police.
Last week, 13 men were charged with conspiring to kidnap the governor, to try to incite a violent insurrection ahead of the November election. Several of the men arrested had been regulars at the anti-lockdown rallies, events organized and supported by well-connected political operatives on the right, according to Lisa Graves, who leads a public policy research group.
You had very established groups helping some groups that were more on the fringes, less well established. These right-wing groups in the United States who were pushing to try to overturn those orders and calling it tyranny. And not just them, but the President of the United States. That sort of rhetoric can embolden people who may have a predisposition toward violence.
Just last week,
after the arrests, Governor Whitmer called out President Donald Trump for stoking distrust and fomenting anger. Trump responded by tweeting he does not tolerate extreme violence and that Governor Whitmer has done a terrible job. 7 of the men charged were members of an anti-government militia that recruited and communicated using Facebook. And although Facebook alerted the FBI to the group's inflammatory statements, experts like Joan Donovan say the social media companies do not always keep up with the threats.
For me, it's more of a warning sign that there are other groups that are potentially harboring such plans. And if the companies that have built these rails to shuttle information around aren't aware of the cargo, then it puts the public at much greater risk.
The year has also seen protests over police killings of black citizens erupt across the country, with some outbreaks of property damage, looting, and clashes with counter-protesters. FBI Director Christopher Wray recently addressed the escalating threat of extremism in testimony before Congress.
Although the majority of protesters have been peaceful, we have opened investigations on individuals involved in criminal activity at these protests, some of whom adhere to violent extremist agendas designed to sow discord and upheaval.
Early voting is already underway in much of America, and the FBI is trying to reassure Americans about the security of the election and urging people to report suspected federal election crimes or voter intimidation. Matt Dibble for VOA News.